Hari Om. Om Shri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namaha. Today, we are very blessed to have Professor B. Mahadevan ji with us. Mahadevan ji, most welcome.
Namaskar.
Mahadevan ji is a well-reputed scholar of the world actually. Just last year, he retired from IIM Bangalore after 32 plus years of service there. Mahadevan ji is also the founding Vice Chancellor of our own Chinmaya Vishwavidyapeeth. And today if we see, he is an authority on Indian knowledge system IKS. So Mahadevan ji, Suswagatam.
Namaskar. Thank you and good to be back in the campus of CVV.
Hari Om, Hari Om. So Mahadevan ji, now we know today not just Bharata but the entire world is talking about Indian knowledge system, Bharatiya Jnana Paddhati, IKS. But we see that there is a lot of confusion about what it actually means. So if Mahadevan ji can please explain what exactly is this Indian knowledge system?
Okay. Yes, I think as you rightly said, different people seem to have different understanding of IKS. I mean, I am reminded of 6 blind men looking at an elephant. In some ways, people look at it from one perspective and they think, oh, this is IKS. I think that is what is happening. I think to understand IKS, it may be useful to go back to the basic first principles of the definition. So, Indian knowledge system, nowadays they say Bharat knowledge system, whichever way it is, there is an Indian, there is a knowledge and there is a system. So, we have 3 components here.
Correct.
So, one way to correctly understand IKS is to understand each of these terms. So, moment you say Indian, there are 2 things. One is there is a geographical dimension to it and there is a demographical dimension to it.
Yes.
I think we need to be very clear about it. When you say geographical dimension, what it means is the India that we know in 1947 is not in India from an Indian knowledge system perspective. This is a political arrangement which Britishers for whatever reasons did and went away. Indian knowledge system is a civilizational corpus running to more than 5-6 millennia. Therefore, the first thing we need to understand is moment you say Indian, it means, of course, in the north and south we were tightly bound. We have the Himalayas on one side and the ocean on the other side. But in the east and west, it is not today's India. We can go as far as Iran on this side and almost far east up to Indonesia we can go. So this is a group of people who have shared the same ideas, same culture, the same way they look at things. So this is the geographical meaning of Indian.
Right.
Then most importantly comes the demographic meaning of Indian. Indian is not somebody who has an Indian passport or somebody who was born in this country. I wouldn't take that definition. Indian is somebody who has very deeply involved into the cultural moorings of this society. Sometimes it can even be foreigners. I mean, one name that comes to my mind is there is one lady by name Stella Kremresh. She came in 1920 to University of Kolkata. I think she spent 10 to 20 years. She was fully absorbed into our ways of things and she wrote a very beautiful book on the Hindu temples. Very nice book. Or she wrote something on Vishnu Dharmottara Purana and so on. So, Indian, the demographic meaning of it. So many of the Indians, I won't put it as Indian in this definition because we don't seem to unfortunately even know deeply what it is and so on. Therefore, and there are people like Max Muller and Megasthenes. I don't call that knowledge as Indian knowledge, although many people think like that. So these are all foreigners and travelers who came, saw, of course they had some interest and so on. So all that piece of knowledge I call it as about IKS. They are not IKS. IKS is only this category. Those who have immersed deeply into this culture, have understood deeply this culture, they are the ones Indian from a demographic perspective. So this is the second definition of Indian.
So that way we can say that even those people who are born in India but not understanding the root or culture are not Indians.
Not necessarily from this perspective.
And those who may be born somewhere else but have come here, understood the roots and followed the culture, they are more Indians probably than the first category.
Yes.
Beautiful.
In the sense, the kind of knowledge they talked about and created is authentically Indian knowledge.
Correct.
That way.
Correct. Because they got into our vision of
And
how
they
we think
knew
of things.
what exactly is happening in this culture and so on. Otherwise, what happens is, I'm not even getting into the intention behind. Let us not, we'll assume there were good intention. It's difficult to translate, just come and see something in Sanskrit and then you take something and then translate it into English and call it as Indian knowledge. I'm making this point particularly because a number of people want to read such translated works and they tend to think they are the authentic Indian sources. They are not. The Indology departments are doing it. They are not. You need to get into the original text and those who have been able to comment on it very well by being part of the society. So this is the Indian part.
Indian part.
Then comes the knowledge. Now, knowledge, whether it is India or Egypt or, Egyptian, Babylonian, whatever it is, or Roman, let it be anything. Every society has a long habit of experimenting, reflecting, thinking, verifying their insights and presenting it in a way it is very native to them. So that way everybody has knowledge. Since we are talking about the Indian knowledge system, we are talking about that kind of a knowledge which are all around this. But the only difference of the knowledge that IKS is from, let us say, the other ancient Chinese civilization, etc., which are also quite old and so on, are two. First of all, I think barring Chinese civilization, it's only the Indian civilization which is uninterrupted corpus. Roman is gone, Babylonian is gone, we don't seem to have much of that and so on. So one thing which is special about Indian knowledge is it is a uninterrupted civilizational corpus running several millennia. That's one thing. Second thing about the Indian knowledge, which is again very unique and we need to understand, is the Indian knowledge is substantially oral. When I say oral, it doesn't mean it doesn't have lipi. It has lipi. But the mode of transmission. See, the entire Vedic corpus is in, Devanagari or Prakrit or Sanskrit, whichever way you want to call it. But the knowledge is sometimes preserved orally.
Shruti.
Which we don't see in the other civilization.
Correct.
The third interesting part about Indian knowledge and which draws from the second part is because something is oral. Unlike, we have books today. So you can write thousands of pages, print it and keep it. They wrote very little in Talapatras. Much of it is oral. When something is oral, then the name of the game is concise. How much? So you can't write a separate book for psychology, a separate piece of work for mathematics, a separate piece of work for spirituality. The Indian knowledge actually weaved all of them together. Which means you take Aryabhata's work on math, you will find aesthetics, you will find Vedanta, you will find math also. So I always say Indian knowledge has three dimensions. Spiritual, right? Religious, and what you may call it as secular. What I mean is what you can use for day-to-day things. How do I improve productivity? How do I calculate the distance? How do I, application oriented, materialistic orientation. All of them are seamlessly weaved into probably in quite a few of works in a single piece. Shakracharya wrote a Yoga Bhashya. Just to give you an example. So in that Yoga Bhashya, when he was talking about some concept, he brings the place value of numbers. How? He says, you see, here is this Devadatta, and this Devadatta is father to someone, son to someone, brother to someone, brother-in-law to someone. He gives that example. And he says, you know how it is? It is like the same number when it occupies different positions, it has different value. There's a mathematical concept there.
Correct.
Which is India's contribution, place value of numbers. So this is what you will find in Indian knowledge, that they seamlessly mix, and I believe they are doing it because it's very concise. So you have to say everything. Then because it is being concise, you will greatly employ what is called sutras. You just say Yamata Rajabana Salagam. Then lot of Chanda Shastra is just covered in one sutra. Again, this comes because the transmission is oral. So you need to be very concise, you need to remember it well. Therefore, so these you don't find in other knowledge that much.
So if we go back in time, was it like when I am talking to somebody, when I am explaining in my class, I explain elaborately, but when it comes to writing, I will write very small pieces of information, or rather the summary or the essence part of the entire teaching only will be written.
Or the entire teaching can be compressed into Mata Rajabbana Salagam is a good example. It was such a short piece that by remembering the piece, entire Panini Sutra is like that.
Correct. 14 sutras and pratyaharas, and then
you just construct the whole thing with that one small strip of information. You should be able to pull out everything.
Correct.
That is what something special about the Indian knowledge.
Systems.
So this is the second part. Then comes system. Now, as we know now, what is system? You have so much of information, you have so much of knowledge. Now, you need to very systematically put it in some heads. You need to compartmentalize it well, so that all related pieces are all properly organized and so on. That is the system part of it. And again, Indians were good. Just take the Sanatana Dharma corpus. Then you get into Manusmriti or Vishnu Purana. You find the Chaturdasha Vidyasthana or the Ashtadasha Vidyasthana, which is a slight expansion of the Chaturdasha Vidyasthana basically.
Yes.
What does it say? It says, here are 4 Vedas, here are 6 Vedangas, you have the Darshanas, you have the Nyaya and Vaisheshika, etc. Then you have Dharma Shastras. So it very nicely has compartmentalized and organized this piece of literature. Now I know when I talk of Darshanas, I know what I am talking. When I talk of Vedanga, I know what I am talking about. So that ability to structure, pack all the information in a very cogent, in a very logical compartments is what I call it as systems. So that is the last part. So if you put all these 3 together, I call it as Indian knowledge system.
So just to summarize, we said by Indian we mean geographical, the old Bharata which was there,
Akhanda
Bharata which was there, and demographically also what we understand by Indian. Knowledge, we said the Indian knowledge, that is uninterrupted corpus which originated here in this place. And we say system means
also in knowledge we said oral,
everything,
etc.
Tradition and everything follows there. And system we say is a structure that we have given to that knowledge corpus.
Yes.
Now one question that people ask when they read Indian knowledge system, this is my understanding, you please Mahadevan, you correct me if I am wrong. They say, how can knowledge be of any particular place? Knowledge is knowledge. How can you call it as Indian knowledge or Chinese knowledge or American knowledge? So my reply to that is that we are not talking about Indian knowledge, we are talking about Indian systems of knowledge which also originated in India. So like in Sanskrit we do the Samasta Pada, and most of the time Shashti Tatpurush Samasa is there. So knowledge system means what? System of knowledge. So is it Indian system of knowledge which originated here, or is it something called as Indian knowledge?
No, I think that semantic is a less serious issue. I mean, it is only for convenience. See, when, you let's take an example. You bought a cell phone and you brought it. Cell phones are cell phones at the end of the day, meaning basic functionalities are similar, etc., etc. Now you say, oh, this is made in Japan. And say, this is made in China, this is made in India. So what are we saying? We are saying it may provide the same functionality, give or take a little bit niceties here and there, screen may be bigger, all that kind of things. But when we say it is made in China, we are only remembering that set of people at a certain geographical place put their heads together and created that. So in the same way, you are right. I think man's inherent nature is to discover knowledge. You leave a set of people in an uninhabited island, they will know Vedanta.
Correct.
Because that is a logical final thing that they will go to. So therefore, that way, yes, when we say Indian knowledge, all that we are saying is we are geographically tagging it, saying here is a set of people who belong to a certain part of this geography where they thought about these issues and codified it in a particular way. Therefore, we call it as Indian knowledge system. For all we know, there are equivalent thinking process elsewhere, which is fine.
So we don't want to claim that we are the only ones who
I
came
don't
up
think
with
it's illogical. We should not even do it.
Correct.
I think it's man's inherent nature is to think and reflect. We are only saying here is a set of people who have thought about it. The only thing perhaps we can claim is with the recorded history, what we are seeing is that the others either have lost the continuity or they created it a little later and so on. That much we can claim. Whereas here is an uninterrupted corpus. Therefore, we are able to date it and take it back and show it 5,000, 6,000 years back and so on. So that kind of an antiquity we can definitely claim.
Right. I remember one place Pujya Gurudev Swami Chinmayananji says that what happened in West was the climatic situation and the life of people was so tough that majority of their time went in surviving. Whereas in the East, what happened? The climatic situation, the tropical and everything became so easy for us that we had time to sit and think and go deeper into subject. Why? Because we were not fighting every day for life. So he said probably because of that, we see that the sciences which are developed in this area, in the eastern, the Indian subcontinent area, they go into much philosophical and much deeper meaning in simple things also. So probably that is the...
Yeah, quite possible. And we also see it actually, even if you look at biodiversity, what happens is that the equator to this plus or minus 23 and a half, that's where the biodiversity is. In a way, what Pujya Gurudev says also reflects there. Essentially, even leave alone human beings, even the Stavara Jangamaha, they also seem to be thriving so well in this belt.
Correct.
So, yes, maybe that would have given us that passage of time and frame of mind to reflect a little more deeply because the other things are taken care.
Right. So good. So now little bit of understanding IKS. Okay, fine. Now one other question that comes is, many times people think Indian knowledge systems means something that happened in the past. It has nothing to do with the present. So most of the places we hear that gravitational law, Newton discovered it, but it was already there in India. So we get all these examples by saying that India's past was great. But what about present? Is the present knowledge that is coming up from India part of IKS? Is it as relevant as the past knowledge? That some clarity on that.
Yes. So we must understand one thing. A stagnant water will become filthy. It will be put to if you put that to disuse, it will actually threaten our existence itself because it will become filthy, it will be the breeding ground for all diseases, etc., and therefore we will perish in the process. Now, let's move from there. Knowledge is exactly like a flowing water. Knowledge cannot be stagnant. We can't say, oh, we have solved all the problems 10,000 years back. Therefore, our job now is only to, find it out and
claim.
Many people have taken that kind of an approach, and I call it as glorification of the past. Glorification of the past has a very limited use. We should not be only doing it. That's one.
It is required to inspire youngsters.
To feel, we have walked through a great path, so I think we should turn back and then understand the nuances of the terrain before we walk further. To that limited extent only we should do it. I think knowledge will be generated forever. Because the very definition of knowledge is something which contextually makes sense to me. Otherwise, what is this knowledge? If something is not contextually making any sense to me, that's not knowledge. Therefore, when the context keeps changing, then the requirement of thinking about newer problems, all that will have to be done. So that is how the so-called scientific progress is going. I think we should pat them on the back for that attitude. that we need to constantly look forward, things are changing, therefore let's now find out. We had that culture. Not that we didn't have that culture. Otherwise, how do you explain? Because until 17th century we created knowledge. It was not that, this is another misnomer. People think all our knowledge was finished and settled some 2000 years back. Not necessarily. You look at when the modern Western society calls the period from 3rd century CE, current era, to 14th century CE as dark age.
Yes.
Simply because in their recorded history, etc., they found nothing. It's only Newton came and saved. Then the whole thing started. Whereas you look at this country, between 3rd century and 14th and 16th, 15th century, phenomenal work was done. When it comes to mathematics, when it comes to iconography, when it comes to architecture, when it comes to health, metallurgy, name it. And they never said, oh, everything has been written in Veda and so our job is to just sit and relax. They never took a position like that. So what has happened is because, we have been under foreign rule for nearly 1000 years, but the last 300 years has been quite bad. The kind of rulers also turned a little, different and so on. So the education system, the umbilical cord was cut. So now, as of now, we might possibly say, oh, we are not really creating Indian knowledge. Because where is it? Because the society is now blown up with scientific waves and so on. I think it's a matter of time. Once we replace our knowledge system and connect to our past and so on, I think we will already that small signs are happening. So we'll pick a leaf here and there and this process will anyway start because it is our natural tendency to do it. So it will happen.
So now with the globalization, now let us say that, okay, because of last 200, 300 years, because we went through a lot and generations were lost, fighting or surviving, if we see. And therefore, probably the knowledge went at the background little bit. Or the rulers, as Mahadevan ji said, were so bad, either tactically bad or violently bad, because of which somehow that umbilical cord was cut. And we are again coming back to our old glory and bringing everything back. I agree. But now the world has changed a lot. Now everything has become so global. I feel that there is somehow the loss of what is Indianness in the overall globalization. So now when we go forward and start creating again knowledge or the knowledge systems, do we say that those knowledge systems which are still rooted to our culture, they can do a lot of innovation and get into any field, but only those which are rooted in Indian culture can be called as IKS?
No. So what will happen? I don't think we'll lose our Indianness, however global we become. We operate from that basic, our roots are there, our foot is on the ground. The manifestation on the top may look a little, again to give you an example, if Panasonic came and then designed a certain music system, let us say, and over years, new technology came in, you have embedded systems, etc., all that. With all that, when you buy another Panasonic, you see a Panasonic element there. What I mean, and this is true of every company also. What I am saying is, we are grounded on certain philosophical moorings and certain fundamental principles. We don't remind and think about it every day because it is part of our DNA. So we have to remember things which are outside of us.
Right.
Anything which is outside of us, we will forget. So we have to keep on reminding. What is very integral to us, nobody has to tell me that I exist. I don't need light. I can be in a pitch dark room and I know I exist. I don't have to touch and see me. Whereas I need to know whether Ved ji is there. I have to, if there is pitch dark, I have to wave my hand and find out and so on. In the same way, I think our moorings are intact, although on the outer layer it looks a little different. Moment this opens up, whatever we do will be Indian. See, that's what foreigners, when they come here, many have even commented. They say there is a way you do things. You invite a guest and have a dinner with him. There is an Indian way, there is an American way, there is a German way. That's what it is. So finally, whatever knowledge we create, however we address the problems of the society globally or contextually, locally, whatever, you will find we will be having that basic structure of Indianness. So I am not very sure whether we'll have lost it or we'll lose it and things like that.
I remember a very funny video that I saw. Nowadays in the Western countries for marriage, etc., they have these glasses arranged on top of each other and liquor or wine is poured.
Achha.
So in one of the Indian weddings, that somebody told the bridegroom to put that wine on top and then it flows down in all the bottles. But the moment he took his hand up, he touched his left hand to the right hand. Now that Indianness, whenever we do any Abhisheka, we touch our left hand. So here he is not actually doing any Abhisheka to God, etc. It is liquor. But that Indianness is so much deep that you can't take it out. As Mahadevan rightly said, we may make different food, but welcoming a guest and offering them food, the food may be Italian, the food may be something, but that Indianness, very, very, very nice. Thank you for this. Now, there is Indian knowledge system, there is contemporary knowledge system, what we call as CKS. Why is it necessary for us that we, along with CKS, contemporary knowledge system, also should study IKS? Why?
Okay. So, first of all, as I was explaining a little earlier, the umbilical cord has been cut. So all knowledge we know is only contemporary knowledge system for all practical purposes. I mean, we may still have Gita, we may have Ramayana, we'll keep it in the puja room, we'll take a flower and put it maybe open, read a shloka, put it back, etc., etc. All that we may do. But the fact is, from an educational system perspective, we are doing only CKS. Now, if we are saying, no, we have had first of all, we should know that we have had a certain legacy, a certain mechanism and a certain value to how we innovate and how do you create better things, where we believed in making the world a better place. All these were there. First we should know it. So we should read, point number one. Point number two, if we want to bring IKS into application, right? Think about it. I want to do a PhD in chemistry. We'll just take an example. Let's say I want to do a PhD in chemistry. Now, if I have to do a PhD in chemistry, first I have to read the seminal works in chemistry.
Yes.
I must first read some of the basic material thoroughly and then say, okay, now that I have read all this, I think this is one place where I think I should focus my attention. In the same way, if I have to really bring IKS back to application and so on, given that there is a 200-year kind of discontinuity, first thing I have to do is I should first know what it is. Without knowing what it is, what am I going to do application and research and so on? This is the second reason. The third reason we need to actually read IKS is in my book on Indian knowledge system, page 1 I have spoken about it, very beginning. See, today, I believe in the next 100 years, it is all about knowledge society. I mean, war, power of the army, all that is fine. Now you will control society by knowledge. And so you have World Intellectual Property Organization and patents and IPR, etc. Now, I have been reading that, what is patent? Simple terms. Let's not get into complex terminologies. I come and say, I know this is how you have to do something. You come and say, no, I know it yesterday. You knew it today. I know it yesterday. So the patent will be given to you, not to me. Simple.
But I have to give proof.
So what happens is, now if we need to actually prove that somebody is claiming a patent, we knew, first of all, we should know where it is.
Correct.
And we should be able to bring it in a way the patent office people will not take on face value. If I just go and tell, no, this was written in Brihat Samhita, he'll say, okay. You have to show how this has been, repository has developed, how it has actually, all that we have to do. So in order to do it, we have to read IKS. Otherwise, we lose a lot of patents. We already lost some patents. So even to protect our own ancestors' intellectual property rights, we need to know IKS. Therefore, even from that perspective, we need it.
Right. So now we understood that along with the contemporary knowledge systems, we must study the Indian knowledge systems also. Now comes the more difficult part, according to me, is the integration of this Indian knowledge system and contemporary knowledge systems. I understand a little bit of history of 50 years also. If we see, we have been bombarded with this idea that India knew nothing and foreigners came and taught us everything. Now we have moved away from that thought a little bit, I would say. But now we would have probably gone to other extremes, saying that others did not do anything, we did everything. I find it little bit wrong, because I feel that there is combination of both that we must take. So going to the integration part of IKS and CKS, Indian knowledge systems and contemporary knowledge systems, what according to you are the fundamentals of this integration?
Okay, first of all, this is very, very important. The idea is not to dump down one knowledge saying this is nothing great, which is what our invaders did. We don't have to do it like that. In fact, this country strongly believed in democracy of knowledge also, which means ye tamam prapadyante tamstataiva bhajamyaham.
Correct.
That's all he said. He said, whichever way you come, you will reach me. So, and ano badraha kratavo yantu vishwataha. Whole good things are all over the place, what Rigveda said. So we believed in it. That everybody brings knowledge. So the question that therefore which is important is, of course, currently there is a certain paradigm and which called as contemporary knowledge, which we seem to be reasonably aware of. And we begin to think that by bringing this older paradigm, sometimes the same problem may find a different angle to solve. Well, there are certain areas where we are stuck. For example, we have simply modern knowledge system does not know how to solve a sustainability problem. Fundamentally, we are in trouble. They are trying carbon credit, everything leads to only a mindless consumption. Now, when such things happen, a good researcher will say, oh, now I have to look for an alternative model. Where do we look for an alternative model? So, the integration starts here. We should say, what are areas where we have been grossly inadequate in solving the problems that we are facing today with the current know-how? I'll give you another example. The biggest problem in business organizations all over the world is what I call it as deprived meaning in workplace. Now the current management practice and mind managed, burnout, stress, etc. The current management systems are simply treading in the dark. So now I will identify 20 such areas. I say, oh, okay, current knowledge system is done good, but it has been grossly inadequate in addressing these 20 issues that the society is facing. So now then let us say, where do I look at? Now take this problem, with the lens of this problem, get into our knowledge system. It doesn't mean, you simply take it and then throw it here, but when you look at it from this lens, it provides a certain angle to solving this problem. This is good research.
Correct.
So that will come. This is one way to integrate. Which means you identify pain points and say, okay, if I have to address this, what can I bring? And then from that lens, you look at some interesting things will come out. This is one area to integrate. The second area to integrate is, there are newer things which have emerged only now, which never existed.
New problems.
Newer structures.
Challenges.
We say artificial intelligence and data mining and machine learning and so on. We didn't talk about it 30 years back, 10 years back also. So when there is a newer problem, then it's a newer opportunity to use any knowledge system. Why should we say you should use only this knowledge system to solve that problem?
Correct.
This is the second area. That, okay, here is something new, altogether a clean slate with which we are introducing something. Why should I look at only this? Let me look at A, B, C, D, E and then get a conglomerate of ideas which might actually solve that problem.
Correct.
Right? So, these are ways by which we have to identify this path in which the CKS, IKS integration has to happen. This is part one. Then comes part two. The part two is a slightly difficult part, and that is, even if I am convinced, oh, here is one area where I see a potential, we can, of course, CKS is there, we'll bring the IKS and then see what to do and so on. Then comes the skill. Who will do it? Because the problem I see, so I want to introduce this problem. I want everybody to understand this. The problem today is people who are in the mainstream, When I say mainstream, doctors, engineers, chartered accountants, etc., so many people, they are reasonably well versed in contemporary knowledge system, but they are absolutely close to zero when it comes to IKS because we didn't read Sanskrit, we didn't know Sanskrit for the sake of dipping into our literature, nor sometimes we read our native vernacular literature that deeply, etc., which may be slightly better than Sanskrit.
Correct.
So the people in the mainstream don't know, honestly, don't know in the sense, don't have the capability to dip into Indian knowledge system. Now you have a huge Sanskrit fraternity, institutions, etc. These people are absolutely blissfully ignorant of mainstream and they don't want to show interest on the mainstream. They may be good in the scriptures, they may kantastiti they will do, they will memorize, they can off memory quote shlokas and sutras, etc. But if we really ask them, how are you going to apply it here, it may be difficult for them. So going forward, we have to find a marriage of these two. There are only two possibilities. One is either these two people come together and say, you bring what you know, I bring what I know, then let's see where they are sort of interacting with one another and see whether we can create a higher, newer knowledge. This is one possibility. Or the second possibility is contemporary knowledge system. People must invest in Sanskrit and this literature. Indian knowledge system people must invest in contemporary knowledge. Now I see the contemporary knowledge people are ready to do today. Some are stepping slowly into it. I'm still not seeing the Indian knowledge system people doing it. So if you take these three paths, it will take a little time. Let it take a little time. If the country has waited for 300 years, 500 years, it can wait for another 20 years. Nothing is going to happen.
But it is more sustainable model, you think, rather than just going two people coming together.
That build a system. Via media. That's a starter.
Right.
And that might enthuse people. If some interesting insights come out of that experiment, then it will encourage the other two constituencies to say, oh, let us do it more seriously and so on. So that's the stage one, stage two.
Amazing. So, see, I myself face this kind of questions that you did engineering. Now you are doing Sanskrit. What is the connection? But there are more connections in the two than we realize. But it is thanks to God, thanks to Gurudev, that after doing engineering, a very contemporary knowledge system field, I somehow came to Vedanta and Sanskrit. Therefore, I understood there is so much of commonality, there is so much of interaction that can happen with the two. So, equipping university students right from their graduation, post-graduation, that as you are studying this, please look into the other side also. Is that the way to go and do the integration?
In fact, that was the founding principle of Chinmaya Vidyapith. That was exactly the idea. Saying that let the Sanskrit people be good in their scriptural base. Samskrita poshanam atyavashyakam. I think we should preserve the language, we should protect it, we should nicely all that. But let the Sanskrit students also dabble into mainstream, understand the mainstream problems, even get an opportunity to walk into the mainstream. So create some mechanism for them to pick up, let us say, marketing, a little bit of entrepreneurship or a few such courses of interest, maybe on interpersonal management, because they may connect it to darshanas.
Correct.
They may be able to quickly see the link. We have denied that. So let the Sanskrit students, while they must be deeply and firmly anchored in the textual basis, I am not rocking that boat at all, we should not. But we should put an icing on the cake. We should layer some material on the top of it so that these students can mainstream. This is on this side. Similarly, on the other side, when you have this BCom, psychology, etc., that we are doing, look at opportunities in which introduce Sanskrit to them, number one. Number two, find out specific points in the degree course where we can actually bring these, if you teach psychology, I don't find any reason why we should not teach Sankhya and Yoga Darshan. Which has some beautiful constructs of trigunas and psychology, etc., etc. The Tridosha Triguna framework is a health wellness framework. Why can't we teach it to a psychology student, for example? Or if there is an architecture, B architecture, Bachelor of Architecture, introduce Samarangana Sutra Dhara. Because they have looked at the whole idea of what are the elements of an architectural masterpiece, etc. And there is proof of the pudding is in eating. We have structures which are 1,000 years old, refusing to even bend, as opposed to leaning towers, which are all world wonders because they are leaning. One day it will fall after a few hundred years. I do not know. So in every such area, on the contemporary knowledge system, we have to start inserting a little bit of these so that that generation will groom and they will push it even more. That kind of a thing has to happen.
And I also feel in this regard that now onus lies with the faculty and students of the university. I will tell one very simple example. We have been telling for a long time that our education system is bad. They did not teach us in school. They did not tell us this in school. But I ask a very simple question to youngsters. Now with the globalization, with the social media everywhere, hundreds of things that they did not teach in schools, you know. Correct. You are finding out yourself. Why don't you invest your time in finding out things in IKS also, though they did not teach in school? Why should we always say that they should have taught us in school? Whatever they did, they did. Let us forget that. Now we are here. Let us see what we can do now. So do you feel that the faculty students should take the onus? And leading question to that is, if they decide what is the right path for them, how should they do it?
No, I will tell you. As you rightly said, when we were students, we were reading subjects, we didn't even know why we were reading subjects. Maybe somebody said we'll get some marks, we'll get some good marks, we'll get a good job, etc. etc. I don't think our education system has taken an approach as like our founding fathers. Today it is all Ya Vidya Sa Niyuktaye.
Not
some
Vimuktaye.
job, not Vimuktaye. It is Niyuktaye. How do I get a job? So get them ready, market ready, etc., which is fine. But then, what did I do and what did you do? As an engineer, you stepped out of it and then you started actually getting deeper somewhere. A lot of people tell me, sir, I never liked history when I was a student. The best thing I do is I read a lot of history. A lot of people say that.
Correct.
And I learned a lot of Sanskrit only after my PhD. Not before that. I never knew Sanskrit before that. So, what is the message here? The message here is, we have to create IKS as a very interesting and a very compelling pitch. If we do it, people will come. On their own, they will come. Slowly, it will also get into the educational system in a way. So, I think currently the effort that is required is to make IKS a very sensible, very attractive, objectively a very interesting piece of information that everybody will say, whether you teach or not, I am going to read. That's what we do anyway. I will find ways to do it. I think we are heading in that direction. That we are bringing it back to the society, showing some nice things that have happened. How did they do it? Perhaps, they did this, they did that. We argue not with the glorification of the past, but with a lot of logic, with a lot of evidence. See, this is what is happening. So, how have they done it? Don't you think they might have? I'll give you an example. South Indian temples are built of granite. Granite is the hardest material known to mankind, which will also be brittle. So, if you touch it, it will break. But the kind of shapes that they have created, 8th century, I am not talking 200 years back. 6th century, 8th century, Pallava kings started in a big way granite temples in Tamil Nadu. Now, let us use simple logic. And I am not bluffing, you can go and see the granite temple today. So, we are not talking about something which existed, we are talking about that which is existing.
Now you can check.
Rajaraja's temple is 1000 years old. You can go and see the
Brihadishwara
temple. Like that. Now, an inquisitive mind will ask, okay, if these guys have made such a beautiful, intricate shape, how did they carve it? Because it will break. This stone is very hard. If you mess it up, it will break. But then they make such a nice kind of a thing. Then the mind goes, okay, then they must be having some tools. The moment you talk about tools, then you say, then these guys must be good in metallurgy because you need high-speed alloy. If you don't have high-speed alloy, you can't work with this hard material. Ordinary steel and all will break. That will break this also.
Correct.
So, when we logically take our thinking process like this, then we tend to believe, oh, there is something very interesting that they have done. I think I need to know what it is. How much of it I can recreate, let's worry about it later. First of all, let me know what is there. I will give you another example. I showed Samudragupta's seal. A photo of that to one professor of metallurgy. I said, sir, and he was the last of the Chandragupta Maurya kings, 300.
Right.
Which is a good 1,700 years back, 750 years back. I said, what do you infer from this? He looked at the photo. He said, let me tell you. First of all, you should know there is something called a metal called gold. Second, you should know that metal is available somewhere down. And you should be able to take the ore. You should know how to separate the metal from the ore. That's the fourth step. Because in a kilogram of that ore, you will get some 20 grams of gold.
Correct.
So you need a process to separate the metal from the ore. Then he said you should know that you cannot work with the gold alone. You have to make it impure by adding copper.
Some alloy.
Otherwise it doesn't work. So that you should know. Then he gave me the complete lesson of metallurgy. Sir, if I have to make it, you should know casting, you should know embossing, you should know forming, you should know molding. I put my hands together. I said, thank you. So we have to logically you should not go to temples and then dirty the place. That's what Indians do. You should go to a temple, you should see science and technology in temple. Best science and technology is available only in temples. So tomorrow I want to tell everyone, if you go to temple tomorrow, of course pray to the God, ask whatever you want to ask, look around. You will find the ingenuity, the engineering prowess, the creativity, the aesthetics, the thought, everything you want is available in a temple. Get humbled by that and get inspired by that. Indian knowledge system, we want to get inspired, go to temples.
Beautiful.
That's what it is.
That's beautiful. Now that takes to one more important question. Please don't be offended by this question I'm telling before. I'll tell you why. We say, like Mahadevan rightly said, we go to temple. The primary goal is to pray to God, get his blessings and all these things. But there is so much of science and technology in it. Now going to the scriptures, we say Bhagavad Gita is a beautiful example. Primarily you go there to understand yourself because it's a spiritual text. But then the same book gives me so many other things other than spirituality. Spirituality is the main goal. I am not denying that. Now there are two views. One view says that you should go to Bhagavad Gita only for spiritual knowledge. There is other view which says, no, there is so much of other things, but everything on the planet, they name it in the name of Bhagavad Gita, which I find little too far-fetched. I often say that nowadays there is one more university called as WhatsApp University, which has started. And that university is such that no proof is required, nothing is required. Anybody can put any message and the blind believers will say, yeah, very good. They will say, Shri Krishna said this to Arjuna, that if one girl leaves you, wait for another girl. Why will Shri Krishna say anything to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita like that? So now, which side should I take? Should I look at spiritual texts only for spirituality, or should I say that they can give me everything?
No. See, this is called buyer beware. You sell a product, you go to a market, and then people are selling. You have to do your homework. You can't blame the other person. Somebody may cheat, somebody may do, etc., etc. So in the same way, we should have a lot of clarity of thought. And take Bhagavad Gita. Since you said Bhagavad Gita, let me take example of the Bhagavad Gita. I think the Moola Uddesha of Bhagavad Gita is Atma Vidya, Atma Jnana. Who am I? So I should not have an iota of doubt as to why I dip into Bhagavad Gita. It is actually telling me that who I am, how can I be liberated, how can I be happy, feel contented, and so on. But when I am dipping into that nectar, there may be other things that may come, and it is foolish on my part to just throw it. I don't have to do it. But I never forget my Moola Uddesha. My Moola Uddesha is always there. I want Bhagavad Gita because I want to know who I am, how I lead a life which makes me fulfilled. But in the process, as I am deeply inquiring that things, so many things come which I consume. Now the problem of the kind that you are saying is coming because I don't have a Mula. I don't even know why I am getting into Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, everybody said Bhagavad Gita, let me also get into Bhagavad Gita. Then I talk all kinds of nonsense with Bhagavad Gita. We can't stop it. But Satyameva Jayate Nanritam. So, in the long run, everything will be dead. What remains is that pristine beauty of what it is intended for. All these are some masalas in between, which is all fine. You are right. One person in a seminar I went, and he said, sir, the string theory is in Bhagavad Gita. String theory is a very complex math in particle physics.
Correct.
I said, where is it? I'm not sure, I don't know. No, sir, there is one shloka, Matta Paratanam na kinchida anyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. Mayi sarvamitam protam sutre manigana. That is the string theory. I said, thank you, but don't do this.
Because they have just taken that word sutra as string and connected the two.
People will do it, but then all this dust will settle. Sometimes the dust is also required so that then you see there is a wind coming.
Correct.
There is a cyclone coming, you should know. In order for the cyclone to come, there is a lot of dust required in between. So these are all the dust which will settle. Let's not worry too much about it. The cyclone will arrive finally.
Wonderful. I am also of the opinion that when you go to such texts, you should not study from any other angle first when you take the text. Say for example, you yourself are expert in management principles from Bhagavad Gita. There is a lot of research going on in psychology and Bhagavad Gita also, because which is little more closer science than management, because psychology deals with me. Yes, Bhagavad Gita goes much deeper and says that I am not the mind also, but keeping that aside, it is still closer science. I feel that when you take such texts like Bhagavad Gita, you should first study it as Bhagavad Gita, not as a text of management or as a text of psychology. Do you agree with this?
Yeah, so I'll tell you why it is important. I agree with you and I'll tell you why it is important. When you try to use Bhagavad Gita and start interpreting it for so many other things, there is one ground rule. And that ground rule, and it's not about Bhagavad Gita, it's about Mahabharata, it's about Purana, it's about Darshanas, whatever you take it. The ground rule is that what you interpret, number one, should not violate the basic premises of Gita. Number two, it should not take you far away from what is the intended area where this Bhagavad Gita is actually addressing issues. Now, if you want to know these two, you should first know the Grantha very well.
Correct.
Then you are very safe. A person who knows Bhagavad Gita well will interpret, but he will not do these two. He will not violate the basic principles. He will not take it too far away because he himself will laugh at it. Because he has a good understanding of the Tatparya. So Tatparya Chintanam is very important first. But with that, we are very safe. With that, with a limited stretching, we can show also some very interesting. My personal journey has been like that. In my anxiety to teach Bhagavad Gita as a management sort of a tool, never ever I have given an impression that let all that remain. This is what it is. My students never go with that impression. They understand the Mula Uddesha of Bhagavad Gita. They also understand, okay, if that is what it is, incidentally one can also see these things there.
Correct.
So that perspective must be preserved. Then we are in a safe region in which we can do all our experimentation, which our ancestors have always believed in. That's why, what are the 6 darshanas? To me, all the 6 darshanas are saying only one thing. It is connecting Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara. This is all it is trying.
Correct.
The 6 darshanas are only trying to address this question. What is the connection between an individual, a notion called God, and there is something called universe? But they all said differently. One said God doesn't exist, one said there are multiple gods, etc. All that kind of thing happened. So, that was allowed as long as they are within that basic premise of, that's why they are called Astika Darshanas, that Astitva was not violated. The Astitva was interpreted in different ways so that you get a possibility of looking at it from different ways, and finally people are the best judges. They think out of all these Siddhantas, this is more appealing to me.
Correct.
But none of them violated. Sankhya Darshana never violated the Astitva of Vedas.
Correct.
But then it gives a slightly different interpretation which Vedantin will not agree.
Correct.
Which is fine. That's okay. So that is the way we should go.
So rooted in the original, you are giving a different perspective. If that rooting does not happen, then that perspective will go far away from the original.
Yes.
So, like you said, that Vedas are the main thing, and all Astika Darshanas are grounded in Vedas, but they are giving different perspectives. So, for each one of them, they may be opposed to each other, but none of them are opposed to Vedas.
Yes.
In the same way, if Bhagavad Gita has to come and give us management techniques, psychological theories, etc., it should not go away from the original point that the Bhagavad Gita is trying to tell.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful. This is amazing.
No, I am reminded, Vidyaranya Swami in Panchadashi, there's a nice shloka which says that this dancer with the pot on the head and standing on the plate.
Yes.
Nitya, there is one shloka.
Yes.
All that, Natana, all that. What he's saying, even when that lady is dancing with all tricks, her concentration is all the time on balancing that
Pots on the head.
pot on the head. That is the apt example for this. So we should remember that pot on our head and do whatever juggleries and tamasha you do as long as the pot doesn't fall.
Oh, very beautiful. I am also reminded of Ramayana, where, for example, Tulsidas ji also and Valmiki ji also, the kind of examples that they use even to describe nature. So their purpose is to tell dharma. They are using nature as a tool to tell dharma. Now the same thing when you look at Kalidasa, the example, the Drishtanta and Dashtantika will be opposite. They will use the concepts of dharma to describe nature. Because their Kalidasa's purpose is to give Nisarga Varnana. So what is the purpose of the text? What is the purpose of the author for giving the text? That should be understood, the text should be understood. Then you can bring out different things. This is very nice. Very important perspective that all the people from CKS, IKS both should understand, I believe. And therefore, as long as you are rooted in that, no problem in finding even, supply chain management system from Bhagavad Gita. There is no problem as long as you are rooted there and you are not going too away from it, as Mahadevan ji said. Thank you very much. Now, coming towards the end. Suppose I am a student and I want to do some research which balances or integrates IKS, CKS both. Where should I start?
I already mentioned it. I said prayojanam anuddishya mandopina pravartate. Therefore, an element of a good research is to start with the problem. I think much of the quality of the research is a function of how well you identified the context in which you want to do the research. So therefore, at a philosophical level, at an objective level, we may say, I want to integrate CKS and IKS, but we should not do it for the sake of it. Then it will all fizzle and fall out. Even when they design a course, I always say this. Don't take, I will do a course on Ramayana. No. Course on Ramayana is not the way to do. You will say, I will address the problems of Dharma and I'll say what are perspectives of Dharma which is useful today for the society. In order to drive that, let me use a vehicle called Ramayana. That way, if you design a course, that course may be more interesting than the other course. So therefore, when we want to do this research, I think the starting point is to say, well, this is an interesting problem which has not been adequately understood. We have not developed a clarity of thought on how to address this particular problem. I want to address that. Now, with that lens, I will go around and say, oh, this part of this text seems to have something. This part of this text seems to have something else. So, let me get them all together from IKS, and CKS also inform me something. So that way, if you do research, that will be very interesting.
Right. Now to the last question, and for me, it is very important question. We say that IKS is very much founded in spirituality. And the core of spirituality is to bring change in oneself in whatever you study. How much important it is for students or faculty or staff, anybody who is doing IKS, CKS integration, or for that matter IKS, to bring change in one's own life. I am asking you this question with a very very clear thought, because I have seen Mahadevan ji for a long time, and I know how much rooted you are and how much change you must have brought into your life. I know your passion when, though you are giving lectures in big universities, etc., if there is a temple, you make sure that you want to go and visit. Now, this is a change which probably the youngsters find it difficult. But how you think, how much important it is and how we should do it?
I think it is extremely important. I would not even stop with staff, faculty and student, although you are asking it from a perspective of a university context. In fact, I have been arguing that the best thing that can happen to any individual, he may be a corporate CEO, he can be a manager, he can be a priest in a temple, he can be working in any organization. The sooner you become spiritual, the better you are. Because spirituality, what is it doing? It is connecting you to your core. Today we are all over the place without even connecting to our core. So it is like building a I am reminded of this story. You build a 5-bedroom apartment, beautiful 5-bedroom apartment. And instead of living there, you go and stand in the portico and then keep looking and spend your lifetime standing on the gate and looking at what's happening on the road. That is what a non-spiritual person is doing. There is a 5-bedroom apartment inside. You don't understand what it is. You don't understand there is infinite power coiled there. You are out already. So you want to do this, do that, and you will not do a great job of it. So it is not so much even for a student or a faculty. I think the sooner we become spiritual, the anchored we are in whatever we do in life. I don't agree that if you become spiritual, you will throw your hands, you will give up everything, you don't need nothing. No, you will do things with more interest. You will be very rooted because you are connected to yourself. You have found your epicenter. What is spirituality doing? It is only connecting to your epicenter.
Yes.
And there are methods to do it. So if you go and worship and stand in front of that Bhagavan for a few minutes, you are establishing that connection. That is what is happening there. I mean, outwardly you may put your hands, you may tell some stotras, all that happen. Essentially, you are re-establishing that connection.
Yes.
So therefore, those practices are actually adding to that one uddesha. And that uddesha is be in touch with you. Let's be in touch with others later. Let's stay in touch with us. Because then we will uncoil energy. Uncoil enormous energy. We will be, the risk aversion will go. We will not be afraid of anything. We have seen ourselves. And abhayam vai prapto si janaka. That's what Yajnavalkya said. You have become fearless now. Because you have understood yourself. That kind of a thing. So I think this is for everyone. I think it's very important.
Thank you very much, Mahadevan ji, for that wonderful insight. And once again, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. You are a storehouse of knowledge yourself. And I always learn something whenever I have conversations with you. Thank you very much for spending this time with us and giving more clarity on the subject overall of IKS and so much in depth and explaining so beautifully. Thank you very much. Punar Milamaha.
Thank you, Ved ji. I think it was a very engaging conversation, I must say. Very quickly we touched on a whole lot of things which are very important. I really enjoyed this conversation, and as I was talking to you, my thoughts went back to the founding times of Chinmaya Vishwavidyapith, which believes in all these kind of things and so on. So you just took me back in time a little bit. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Hari Om.